Hey folks, it's Sam, and it's a little late for me. It's about 12:30 a.m. on Friday, October 2nd. But I'm making this video because we just had a real bombshell, and I'm up and I'm looking at the astrology of this COVID announcement that just happened with the US President Donald Trump. He just announced that he has COVID-19, and I have the chart here, and it's a good opportunity for a case study on the astrology here of the COVID, especially, and of his cycles right now, and when this started. Um, and I also have his chart, which I'll be looking at also. Um, but you see, this is his chart over here. He's got Leo rising, Mars in the first house. He has Rahu Sun in the 10th house, Ketu Moon in the 4th house. Rahu Sun is in Taurus, Ketu Moon is in Scorpio, and then Jupiter retrograde here in the 2nd house, Saturn Venus in the 12th house of Cancer, and Mercury and Gemini in the 11th house. By the way, people are already saying, do you think it's a stunt, or do you think he's faking it? He would never fake this. This is not good news for him. So I'm going to say that first, like all the conspiratorial thinking, my Lord. He had doctors examine him. People would have to fake all kinds of things to do that. His wife said she has it too. It's not faking. Please, let's keep our heads on. It's not faking. Okay? He has this. This is not beneficial to him. It makes him look bad. He's the one who came out and has been ridiculing the thing the whole time. It's going to come out. There's going to be some real difficult questions that he's going to have to answer, like they knew about his aide Hope Hicks on Thursday, October 1st. And even though they knew about it, they still did all these other events. And there's going to be a whole mess that comes out about this. It's not going to be good. So anyway, I'm just going to go through this, and I'm not going to take questions or whatever. I'm just going to ignore it and go through this case study, because that's really what it is. It's a case study. It's an astrology case study, okay? And that's the spirit of it, not necessarily a political update, so I'm just going to not really get that much into the politics of it. I'm just going to show it as an astrology case study. So as I have it here outlined pretty clearly, this was the exact moment that the announcement came. And it was early morning of October the 2nd at 12:54 a.m. in Washington, D.C. And at that time, the ascendant had just become Cancer. It was at the very end of Gemini. And that, at the very end of Gemini, it was, it's at that point that is quite unreliable, where one sign becomes another. It's called Sandhi, and that Rashi Sandhi showed, this kind of unsettled and unstable energy. And this unstable, unsettled energy, was the moment that he wrote the tweet on Twitter. It was at 12:54 a.m. And so when we draw up the chart, there's a lot of things here to look at. Now, first of all, it was a full moon, and it was happening in Trump's 8th house. So again, this is from the ascendant. Again, this is a really good case study in reading transits from the ascendant, not from the moon. Those who study with me know that I've been very emphatic that you read transits from the ascendant, not from the moon. Even though in some of the older texts it says to read from the moon, this is because probably in the ancient times they didn't have accurate birth times, and the moon was the most reliable factor. But now we have good birth times, so we read transits from the ascendant. So you can see on this day, this was right after the full moon. Again, you see the sun is at 15:18 of Virgo. The moon is at 18:52. So it's actually the moon had just started waning. So it was actually after the exact full moon, but it's the full moon day. You see the moon is also very close to Mars in the sky, retrograde Mars. Mars is about to go back into his 8th house as well by transit. Mars is right on the cusp as well. So you look at these planets that are in very early degrees that are less than 1 degree. In fact, even Saturn is 1 degree stationary, but it's barely 1 degree. So you see all of this unreliable energy. This ascendant had just moved from his 11th house into his 12th house. And then again, but the big transits beyond the ascendant was that the moon going through his 8th house, and again, it's the 8th house from Leo. So you start from his ascendant and you go 8 houses and you get the moon. And again, it's full moon in his 8th house. So again, when the moon is full, it's very prominent. These full moons are very prominent for all of us. And we see how prominent it is in this case. When read from his ascendant, it's a very big, prominent, transformative shift, right? So again, it's the 8th house, which is about sudden, shocking revelations. Boom, these sudden, shocking revelations come out and shock him. They've probably found out early in the day on Thursday. Early in the day, I think by 1 p.m. or so, they found out that Hope Hicks, his assistant, that she had tested positive for COVID, and she's around him all the time. She's always on the plane with him and flying around, and he's been flying all over the place, not really honoring the COVID protocols of his own government and all. Again, those who are into this whole idea that it's just a big conspiracy and it's a hoax and all like that, okay, but the official line of the US government, including the Trump administration, is that it's not a hoax, that we should be doing social distancing, we should be wearing masks. Again, this is also the official line of the Trump administration. He just doesn't follow the guidelines. He doesn't follow the guidelines, and he undercuts it and mocks it and makes fun of it all the time, but that is the official line. So again, welcome to America with this president. So he wasn't following his own protocols, flying around. Of course, he was going to have another big rally. He's been having these rallies with all these people. Of course, they don't have any masks on. He doesn't either, but he's always like, well, don't worry, I get tested. We're all tested every day, so it's all fine. Well, it's not all fine. Testing doesn't mean you don't get it. It means you're testing for it. If you don't follow the protocols, you can get it. So he knew his assistant, Hope Hicks, had it by, I think it was 1 p.m. on Thursday or earlier, but then they all went on a trip. They left her behind. They left a lot of people behind and went to a fundraiser, flew on the plane and everything else, probably knowing that Hope Hicks had tested positive for COVID. So again, this is going to come out. This isn't going to be good news for him. He's going to have to answer for this now. When did you know? And how did you possibly know that your assistant tested positive for COVID and you still went about your business and you still went about as if it didn't happen and expose? Again, the problem is you're exposing all these other people to it. All of your staff, all these other people. He had a fundraiser in a room. They probably weren't wearing masks. Again, Trump likes to go in these rooms. We have videos of it and him just flaunting the whole thing. Nobody wearing masks. Again, he's like, oh, don't worry, I'm not going to get sick. Well, what about everybody else? Anyway, without getting into all that part of it, I'm bringing this up because that's the 8th house part of it. Suddenly, okay, all this stuff you've been doing, now boom, now this comes out, right? So that's full moon in Trump's 8th house, and that full moon is like full on. By the way, the moon is Trump's 12th house ruler. The planets are always the nature of their rulership with anyone. So for Trump, because he's a Leo, the moon is the 12th lord. So it's a 12th house ruler going through the 8th. Again, you can just look up in the sky right now and see how close it is to Mars. Mars is really bright, and Mars is going retrograde back into his 8th house. This is a dangerous transit. Make no mistake about it. Again, the death rate is still not high. More than 90% of people, even in his age range, don't die from it. They recover. But he's at the highest age range, and comorbidities like being, quite overweight. One would not expect that he has a really strong immune system to some extent because He seems to not eat a lot of vegetables and stuff like that, by his own admission, junk food and stuff. So it could be serious. Of course, he's got the best medical care in the world, but this is no joke. He's just got a very serious illness. And Mars is about to go retrograde back into his 8th house. This is no joke. This is real. Okay? And he's in the dasha of Jupiter Saturn. Dasha. So Jupiter is his 8th lord, and Saturn is his 6th lord. So he's running the dasha of 2 malefics. Even though Jupiter is Jupiter, it's the 8th lord for Leo. And the 8th house is dominant, per the rules of Parashara. So it's the 8th lord, and he's been in the dasha of the 8th lord his entire presidency. That's why his presidency has been, quite frankly, so dangerous. Not just for him, but for the country, but I mean dangerous to him as well, because he's been impeached, there's so much scandal. All of this stuff with scandals, again, whether you think he's innocent or not getting into all that, it's just a fact. It's an observable fact. Is because of 8th house. 8th house is scandals. And those things coming out. So his whole presidency has been in Jupiter Dasha, but now it's Jupiter Saturn since early last year. And it's, again, the Saturn is the 6th house ruler. 6th house is, of course, illness. And again, Saturn in the sky is also here in the 6th house. Very early degree. And, it's a very formidable Saturn here. Saturn is really powerful here. And he's stationary direct. I did a video a couple days ago, last week or something, about the stations of the planets, the planetary stations. Again, Mars is still not moving very fast either, and Saturn is also not moving very fast. Jupiter is also pretty still in the sky, but especially Saturn is stationary. It's been hanging at 1 degree Capricorn for a while. And it's back at the place that it was when COVID first started, back in early 2020, earlier this year. So a lot of power here, and you can see even in this, look in this Muhurta chart, again, this is the moment that they made the announcement. The ascendant was exactly opposite that Saturn. This is the Muhurta when he made the announcement. The ascendant was exactly opposite that Saturn. Right? It had just gone into this place where Saturn is like exactly opposite the ascendant. Jupiter is the 6th lord in the 6th. Mars is retrograde in the 10th. So again, this is the announcement chart. But a few other things about this chart, and you look at his natal chart. Let me make it bigger here. So again, if we look at his natal chart, in particular, we got Ketu transit on his natal moon. Exact. Boy, this is like exact. Ketu 2842. His moon is 2805. That's exact. Of course, it's also very close to his natal Ketu and his natal Rahu. So these lunar nodes are also exactly returning. But again, this is really a recurrence transit of his nodes. And this this recurrence transit for his nodes are definitely also really shown, because again, the nodes are very sudden and shocking, and like boom, right? All of a sudden something happens. So you can see that part more from this Rahu going through the 10th house, and also on his natal sun, because this is a big part of his nature. But especially the getting sick part and the illness and the quarantine. This is what really drew me here, is now the quarantine is this debilitated moon in the 4th house. So the moon is debilitated here in his 4th house, and it's being transited by this Ketu in the sky. So Ketu is going right over that natal moon, and this is showing where now he's going to be quarantined in his home again, because he's got Ketu moon in the 4th house, and now Ketu is going over the moon, and the moon is the 12th house ruler. So again, it's going to be it shows that solitude, and again with those who are, spiritual and all of this, this could lead to that kind of spirituality, right? And he's got the potential for that spirituality with K2 moon in the fourth, even though it's debilitated. But there's so much, it doesn't really, play out that way. But what is playing out again is this K2 right on his moon. Look at the degrees, they're exact degrees. This 2842 and 2805. And so that's exact. So these are the big things in this Muhurta chart that make it really fascinating to, as a case study. So I wanted to make the quick video here because I'm a little amped by it. When these things happen, I was just sitting here earlier, and then a little ticker popped up about where it said that his assistant had tested positive for COVID, and I was like, uh-oh, because I was watching to see what's going to happen on this full moon, because again, these lunation cycles are really important, and with Trump, they're very powerful, especially full moons. And here's a thing to understand. And it's actually interesting because I'm going to be teaching an intensive with my certification course students on the Panchanga. And one of the things that's really important, this is called a recurrence transit, and it happens every month. Whenever the lunar phase that you were born under, whenever it happens every month, because it happens every month, he was born on Shukla Purnima, which means the full moon. He was born on the full moon. You see, the sun is 2949, the moon is 2805. This was also a lunar eclipse. But besides that, his tithi was the full moon, Shukla Purnima. You also were born on a certain day within the lunar month, like I was born on Shukla Ekadashi, which is the 11th day of the waxing moon. Some people are born, let's say, they're born on the 11th day of the waning moon. That would be Krishna Ekadashi. So you have Shukla Paksha and Krishna Paksha. Shukla Paksha is the section of the lunation cycle where the moon is waxing, and Krishna Paksha is when it's waning, and there are 15 days. So this happened right after the full moon, but full moons are really powerful for him because that's his birth tithi, is what it's called. So we had the full moon on Thursday. That was the full moon day. And then right after the full moon, and so when Hope Hicks tested positive for COVID and he went out to the day and he did his fundraising, when all that was happening, that was his lunar day because it was the full moon. It was Shukla Purnima, or just Purnima. Then right after that, the moon starts to wane, and then we had this Muhurta, but it's still very close to this full moon. But it's not just because full moons are powerful. For him, they're even more powerful because he was born on the full moon. So you see big things happen on the full moon. And anytime the moon gets near his natal moon or his natal sun or anything, the moon is really powerful for him as an indicator. So I was kind of keeping my eye open for what was going to happen, because this is going to be a full moon in his 8th house. And there's been so much crazy news going on. I thought it'd be like a release of another news story or something like that. And there was some weird news today, but of course there always is. But this is beyond, and this is total 8th house. By the way, the 8th house is the house of death. It's the house of transformation and death. And again, we can't take things out of context. If he wasn't like the president with the best medical team in the world surrounding him, he would be in grave danger right now. He would be in mortal danger. This is a deadly disease, and he's got comorbidities, and he's got care around him, but make no mistake, I don't think it's going to be as easy as people think. People think, okay, well, it's just no big deal. It could be a big deal. I'm not saying he's going to die, but it could be more serious than people think, particularly because, again, Mars, which is his Yoga Karaka planet, Mars is his powerful planet. Again, look, he's got Mars right on the ascendant. That's what gives him that, of course, Mars nature, that fighting nature. And Mars has been going through his 9th house. But again, look, Mars just turned retrograde. Now Mars is going to go back into his 8th house. While he's fighting off COVID, Mars, the planet of literally like the immune system and whatnot, is retrograde. It's going to go back into Pisces, his 8th house. It's going to be there for almost the rest of the year. This is, I mean, so, and again, he's in Jupiter-Saturn Dasha. Saturn Dasha has not been very good to him. In fact, one of the things that happened in Saturn Dasha health-wise was last summer. He was in Saturn Dasha last summer when he got rushed to the hospital unexpectedly. Donald Trump has always been he's got some health issues that he has not told the public. He had that sudden emergency room visit in the summer of 2019 or the end of September or something, I don't remember exactly. But that was not normal. And of course he lied about it. Sorry, I'm just going to be honest. But of course they said something that wasn't true. Oh, it was just part of the annual physical and blah, blah, blah. That's total BS. They have a fully staffed medical facility at the White House. A typical checkup, whatever it is that required them to rush him to Walter Reed Medical Center, was not some typical thing. It wasn't, because they have a fully functioning, almost like emergency room at the hospital. I'm sorry, at the White House. They can handle a lot. It wasn't just part of a checkup. Something happened, and suddenly he's being rushed to Walter Reed. That doesn't happen ever. It just doesn't, because it's a big commitment of resources and everything else. So something happened with his health. Again, that was Jupiter Saturn. That was already the same dasha that he's in right now. So his health, he's in a dangerous cycle anyway with his health. So again, we've also seen him slowing down, like, walking down that. I mean, what's this thing like trying to lift a glass, like 2 hands to lift a glass to his mouth and stuff? Again, I'm not trying to make something out of nothing. I'm just saying that he's in Jupiter-Saturn Dasha right now, the 8th and the 6th house lords. It's not like he's in this Dasha where his health is really powerful. Even if it wasn't, he's 74 years old. He's at least 40 pounds overweight, if not a lot more. And he just caught a deadly, that could kill people, virus. And Mars is about to go retrograde back into his 8th house. And by the way, Mars in the 8th house, Mars or Rahu in the 8th house is very dangerous transit for your health. By the way, Saturn in the 8th house actually protects the health. Mars in the 8th house is not as good for health, for sure. Mars is better in the 6th house because 6th house has to do with the immune system and stuff like that. But Mars in the 8th house is not as powerful. You like to see Saturn in the 8th house, Mars in the 6th house if you had to choose one or the other. Here we have Saturn in the 6th house, which isn't really so bad, but Mars in the 8th house is not a great transit for getting well. Again, it shows the potential, especially with all this care that he's going to be getting. But make no mistake, this isn't going to be like, okay, whatever. No, I mean, so we should be aware of that. But again, this is a real transit. By the way, you can see, last thing about this Muhurta, you have to be really clear about something about the transits that are happening in the sky right now, and they're happening also in the context of an election and all these other things that are going on. You can look at the transits here. Again, this is his natal Saturn. His natal Saturn is barely 1 degree of Cancer in his 12th house. This is why Saturn is not so powerful for him. It's less than 1 degree. Again, this is where Saturn is in the sky right now, barely 1 degree. So Saturn in the sky is opposite his natal Saturn, almost exact right now. It's like an exact Saturn opposition right now. And this ascendant, look at this ascendant, was going right over his natal Saturn as well. This is 0.8 degrees, 0.8 seconds, but 10 minutes later, and it would have crossed over his natal Saturn. So this ascendant was also happening. And, the ascendant is as the Earth is turning. So as the Earth is turning, his Saturn was rising. And the exact moment that the tweet was sent, the ascendant had just crossed over into Cancer. And then within 5 minutes, it would have crossed and hit his natal Saturn. No, let me make this bigger. It would have crossed and hit his natal Saturn. So this is a very exact transit that I wanted to show here. And so I'll just speculate a little bit about what it might mean for election or whatever. I mean, he's behind badly in all the polling. I'll do a video about that in the next day or so. Actually, I was even thinking of doing it today just to show the polling, because the polling is really bad. As much as people think, oh, nothing, he's going to win. Why does anything, why does he never pay a penalty for anything? He does, and he has. He's getting trounced in the polling. The polling is just god awful. Well, why don't I just do it real quick? I'll just show you why I'm saying that right now, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. And again, this is something that, wait a minute, where is it? What happened? Oh, here it is. Okay. Let me just show you what I'm talking about. And show you, okay. This is the best place to look. By the way, I was going to say, oops, wait a second. Did I share it? Where does it go? Okay. One of the things is that people, again, because of their projections, I don't play into it so much, but because of people's projections, because they only get all their news from watching TV shows and news personalities, they think everybody does that. I don't do that, by the way. I look at data. And one of the best places for data is Project 538, 538.com. This is a graph of polling. It's just polls. It's just polling. I just want to see the data and looking at the data. And this is a snake chart that they have on 538.com, which shows all the polling. They aggregate all the polling. It's basically a polling aggregator. They have opinions and stuff like that too, but I don't read all that. I don't care about people's opinions. I want to look at data. I can figure it out myself. Just let me see the data. And so you can see everything up here in the blue. This is where Biden is leading. If Biden gets across here, if he wins he's way ahead in all these states. If he gets to this, which is Pennsylvania, he wins. So Trump can win every one of these states. By the way, Trump is losing in all of these states. He's losing in North Carolina, Ohio, Florida, Arizona, Pennsylvania. And when I say losing, I mean he's losing by a lot. And I want to show you, look deeper into the polling, and you can see. It's not just that he's losing, but he's been losing the entire time. He's never been ahead in most of these states. And this is highly unusual, and it's definitely more unusual than it was in 2016. This wasn't the case in 2016, where with Hillary Clinton, it was back and forth. It was much more fluid. Trump has been losing the entire time. And by the way, he knows this. This is why he's saying all this stuff about why he's trying to do all of this stuff to disrupt the election. He's losing in all of these states, even states that are hardly ever in contention. Like he's even losing in Ohio. Whoops, he's losing in so many typically Republican states. And again, all of this is really hard. He's got to make up like 5 or 6 points in Pennsylvania, 6 or 7 points in Wisconsin. He's losing Arizona. And look, he's never been ahead in any of these states. He's been behind the whole time. Now you might say, well, that's only 4 points. But again, he's never been ahead. If you go back to some of the states where it's close and where, like, look at Texas, for example. Did you look in the news? Did you realize that the governor of Texas just unprecedented voter obstruction? He pulled out all of the voter drop boxes. You want to know why? Because Trump is going to lose. Trump could lose Texas. Look at Texas, for example. Texas is usually the Republicans win by a landslide. Look at how close Texas is. Barely. Biden is barely losing, and Biden was actually ahead in Texas at one point. So Trump is barely holding Texas. This is terrible. This is terrible. And you can look and see, you can look at the legacy. Look at North Carolina, for example. That went to Trump. Trump won all these states in 2016. Biden is ahead. Biden has been ahead the whole time. Now it's close. So Trump could win these states and he would still lose. What Trump has to do is he has to win some of these states. He's got to flip Florida, Arizona, Pennsylvania, and he's never been ahead. He's never even been close. And he's running out of time. It's not unlimited amount of time. And again, you can go back and look at the polling. These are polling averages. You know, this is where it is now, 4 points. So Trump's got to get 4 points somehow. In Arizona, where he's never been ahead. And again, look, the latest polling was Biden up by 4, added yesterday. So you should look at this. This is how you do research. You don't listen to what people on television say, right or left. You find good sources of data. You find good sources of data and then interpret the data. And so, again, this is where it's at. And there are a few other things to understand. At this point in the race in 2016, it was about a 3-point lead by Hillary Clinton. 3.5 points. Biden's got about an 8-point lead right now, nationally. That's gigantic. All of these battleground states were very close at that time. Very close. They were 2 and 3 points. Biden's up by like 6, 7. Of course it could still shift, but Biden's got to shift all of this. Trump has got to shift all of this. And by the way, what just happened is it's Biden who is gaining. Look, just recently in Ohio, Trump was ahead in Ohio a couple days ago, but look at the latest polls in Ohio. Look, you can see this is how you look at the data. Look, I'll make this bigger. This is just recently in the past few days. Biden overtook Trump in Ohio. Trump was ahead in Ohio by about a point. Look, September 12, September 13, 14, September 19. Well, look, Biden went ahead in Ohio. No Republican has won the presidency without winning Ohio. And Biden is now up almost like a 1.5 in Ohio. Again, this is just icing on the cake. So these are numbers. These are numbers. They've been back and forth. But so this is the kind of stuff where it's not what these idiots on TV say. And even if you look at the latest polling, Fox News poll, Biden up by 5 in Ohio. So across the board, the polling is just Trump is losing when you look at the polling, and he knows he can't win. I'm just going to flat out say it. I mean, I'm going to do my final predictions, but it hasn't changed. I said the same thing a month and a half ago. He's acting obviously like he's watching the polling, which he is, and he knows he can't win unless he does something: voter suppression, cheating, saying that it's got to go into the courts, saying we're not going to count the votes, just anything, because he knows, he sees this too, believe me, and he knows what's happening. I said it a couple months ago. Joe Biden is not Hillary Clinton. And even as unpopular as Hillary Clinton was, he lost by 3 million votes and barely squeaked out a victory because of 78,000 votes in 3 states. And that demographic is not going for Trump. That demographic was undecided voters who took a chance. And Trump has been losing undecided voters since he took office. And this is what it looks like. It looks like this when you look at the numbers. So we've had this polling forever. So this just backs it up. So again, I don't listen to what they say on the talk shows. I look at the data, and this data is clear. And it's been clear. This hasn't changed. This is the most remarkably stable race. Again, when you look at all of this, it's especially stable in Biden's favor, where Trump hasn't been ahead in almost in any of these states. Even North Carolina, for God's sake. All of these states, Trump has closed the gap. Actually, Florida is a good example, because Florida is one where they talked a lot about how after the Republican convention, he got a bump in Florida, and you can see it. So he got a bump in Florida. Let me pull it up. So he got a bump in Florida. This was when the Republican convention happened around the end of August, right? So after that, he got a bump in Florida. He didn't get a bump anywhere else, but he did in Florida. So he changed it from about 5.6, then it went to 2.8, 1.8. Now it's back to about 2.3. So again, so you can see Trump closes the gap, but he doesn't overtake him ever. And again, if you look at the data in aggregate, he's never been ahead. At some point, you think he's got to be leading at some point in order to win. How is he going to close the gap when he's never even taken the lead? And this is in all of those places that I just looked at, in all of these states that are trending blue. So in all of these states that are trending blue down here, Trump has never been ahead. Actually, he was in Ohio. But from North Carolina on, he's been behind the whole time. So again, realistically, it's easy to say something like, well, he could make it up. Well, you never know. Well, da 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 da. Yeah, but there's no precedent for it. It's been completely stable the entire time, and he knows it. Is he talking like someone who thinks he's going to win? He's already saying that the vote is going to be rigged. Would he be saying that if he thought he was going to win? Would he be saying that if he thought my victory is going to be rigged? Of course not. He's saying because he can see what's going to happen, so he's trying to poison it. So this is pretty, again, a lot can happen because he's good at deception and maybe throwing things and maybe stealing it and doing all this other stuff. And he could prevail, but he ain't going to get the votes. It ain't going to be this way, I don't think. So anyway, I initially wanted to talk about this because I wanted to talk about this COVID, but how it might affect the election, it's hard to say. It's definitely a wild card. Some people think it might, bring out a sort of sympathy vote or something like that. Who knows? Again, I don't think any of that stuff is going to work. I think the only way he wins is some kind of trickery, deception. I think what's going to happen is any way possible he's going to claim victory on election night, or as soon as it looks like it's possible, he's going to go, okay, see, we won. That's it. I won. And then anything after him saying I won, he's going to say is a hoax. And that's going to be his line. He's going to try to just smear it up, muck it up. But I don't think it's going to work, because I think he could get thumped and trounced royally. It could happen. I mean, and again, we'll have to see what happens, and I'm going to do a final look at it again. But I just showed you the numbers of what I'm looking at. And aside from that, even the astrology, Biden's dashas are stronger. You're looking at Trump's dashas right now. Trump just got a fatal disease. He's trying to win the presidency, and he just contracted this fatal illness a month before. That's the dasha Trump is in. It's not a powerful time for him. Again, I said it a while ago. This is not a good time for him at all. And even these transits, the last time Saturn went through here is when he had all of his bankruptcies. Now he tends to prevail over them somehow, but this is not a strong time for him. Again, you can see it. Again, this is the context as well. When people are like, well, but he'd come back, he might still win, he might win. Yeah, he might, but I'm looking at astrology. I'm not looking at hope. Aside from the astrology, I also look at these numbers. I also know enough about this to know what I'm looking at. And I'm looking to say, is he going to make up all this ground while he's in this terrible dasha? Just look at his life right now. His whole family, all his family members are coming out and saying what a slimeball he is. Everybody who ever worked for him. And what is he going to do to make it up? He just had the worst debate in history. And in that context, he's going to make up 6 points in Pennsylvania. Everybody's already decided as well. A few years ago, at this time, when he ran against Hillary Clinton, at this point in the race, there was something like 15% undecided. Like when you looked at the favorable, unfavorable, and who you're voting for and who you're not, it was something like 45 for Hillary Clinton, 41 for Donald Trump, and then something like 12% undecided. There was a huge amount of undecided voters. Now, it's not like that. It's like literally Biden is over 50% nationally, something like 51 to like 43. I think that's what it is, 51 to 44 maybe. It's like that's 7 points, but there's only about 7% undecided. So Trump would have to get almost every one of them, which again just doesn't make sense, especially the way he's acting. Those undecided voters are the ones who are looking now to see. And many of them in 2016 took a chance on Trump because they're like, well, who knows? And we didn't know. They took a chance on him. But now it's like, we see what he's done. We see what he's done. He's got a record. And so the likelihood, what typically happens, and again, I know this because I study it, what typically happens is the undecideds break for the challenger in an election. This is why the incumbent has so much advantage, because they have a record. And the undecideds usually break for the challenger. like they did more for Donald Trump in 2016, because he was seen more as the challenger, seen more as the outsider. So the more the undecideds favor the other person, which in this case is Biden. Again, this is statistical, but you can also understand why. Because if he's been president for 4 years and you're still not decided, what does that say? So there's much less undecideds this year, and he would have to get almost all of them at this point. But what does he have to get them with? His wonderful personality? All he does is divide more and more and more and push the people that he's not convincing anyone when he gets up and acts the way he did at the debate the other night. He's not convincing anyone. He's just running the same playbook on steroids. He's already got the people who think that's cool. So these are just realities as well. So again, this now in context, I can't imagine that this helps him. Again, some people say, well, it might give him that sort of sympathy vote. Oh, sympathy for the president, except for he's not beloved. He's not a beloved figure. If he would have been, let's say someone like, let's say someone even like George W. Bush, okay, who was not very, especially by the end, he wasn't very competent or not very well regarded as a president, but he was likable. So if George W. Bush would have gotten really sick, you could see where he would get maybe a sympathy vote. Because people generally thought, well, I don't like his politics, but he seems like a decent guy, and oh, that's sad. But Trump doesn't evoke that at all. He doesn't evoke that. So it's hard for me to think he's going to get a sympathy vote, particularly in this regard. This isn't like he somehow got sick. He didn't get shot, right? He caught an illness that he has been ridiculing at the peril of the United States citizens since its beginning. It's hard to think that he's going to get a sympathy vote. The people that like him might, but again, I'm looking at undecideds that are going to decide the election. I can't see where these undecideds are going to be like, well, oh, okay, I'll vote for him now that he got COVID. I don't think that's going to help him. I just can't see that. So, because people asked in the comments if I think it will help him or not. I'm not thinking that this announcement is going to help him. He's so divisive already that, again, I don't think that part, which someone might think is, where like this could benefit him, I'm not seeing it. I think if anything, it's just going to be a magnifier of incompetence, by the way. It just, again, he's been playing this narrative forever that it's not that serious. It's not that it's overblown, it's a hoax, you don't have to wear a mask, and really just flaunting it the whole time. It's just like a reverb chamber of incompetence, of his incompetent handling of it. That's the way I think it's going to be seen, primarily. I can't imagine, I don't think, at least with the electorate in general, it's going to be helpful. And again, this is all still happening within this context of his dashas. I'm still reading the dashas, the Jupiter, Saturn, 8th and 6th Lord. It's a very hard dasha to be doing anything for him except winning and destroying enemies based on his Viparit Raja Yoga, which, again, I'm going to do another video. I'm going to do a final election video where I bring things together, but I've done several of them. You should go back and watch. I did ones overall that are just about the cultural ramifications right now, like historically. And then I did a couple that have the astrology. One where I just looked at the charts of the 4 people. I did another one where I just basically looked at why Trump keeps winning even when he loses, because of this powerful Viparit Raja Yoga. And he's benefiting from it now, this Jupiter Saturn dasha. So he has a lot of capacity to destroy enemies using these kinds of means. This is what he's done his whole life. And it's really an evaluation of whether I think he'll be able to pull that off. Because I don't think there's any way he does it, I would say, legally, or where he just gets more votes and wins. No way. No way. And I think he knows he can't. That's why he's saying what he's saying. No one who thought he could win legally would keep saying that it's going to be rigged. No one's going to say, don't trust the election results. It's going to be rigged. Unless I win. It's just kind of like, no. So this is quite a moment right now, and this case study has shown this full moon in Trump's 8th house, right? You start in Leo. This is his ascendant, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, right after the full moon in his 8th house. Shocking, sudden, public revelation, right? Again, Mars is about to go back into that 8th house. It could be a serious thing. He's in serious jeopardy. Again, if he didn't have the greatest medical care in the world, he would be his life would be in great jeopardy with his age and his weight and all that stuff. But he's got good medical care, so I don't think it'll be his demise. But he's got a bit of a struggle on his hand. K2 transit over his natal moon. Again, exact. This shows the quarantine. I was like, there it is, right? This K2 right on his natal moon, right? 2842 of K2 in the sky right now, and the moon at 2805 in the 4th house. Again, it's debilitated moon in the 4th. So that's saying stay home. Stay home, quarantine, right? That's the 4th house. And the moon, right? And so again, K2 is like, it's like this, heavy concentrated energy. So K2 going over that moon in the 4th in Scorpio is like, okay, stay home, and not leave and go out there and spread it to the world, which is what he really loves doing, because he has that Sun Rahu in the 10th house. So that's really his go-to, is that here I am out in the public. He wants to be out there doing these rallies and all that stuff, to cheering crowds, even in spite of COVID and stuff. Again, he's really just flaunted the danger. And again, his point of view has been, well, hey, don't worry, everybody. I'm getting tested all the time, so don't worry. I'm fine. I'm fine, folks. You, on the other hand, have a little bit to worry about, so come in this stadium. But don't worry about me. I'll be just fine. So he ain't going to be doing much of that for a while. K2 transit on his natal moon. In fact, he might have done his last big rally like that. Who knows? And then again, it's, the Jupiter-Saturn dasha, like I said, 8th and 6th lords, two malefic house rulers, right? And again, Saturn is the karaka of death. It's the karaka, the indicator of endings, and Jupiter is also the ruler of death for Leo, because it's the 8th lord. And then again, he's also just getting that nodal return. Also, especially that Rahu on the natal sun, this recurrence transit up here is also, I've seen this many times. I'll just say it. I've seen it lead to literally to like sudden death. Rahu going over someone's sun. Because the sun is vitality, and Rahu, especially suddenly, something that comes out of the blue really quick, like sudden, shocking, like bam. Rahu can always do that. Again, Rahu it's a dangerous energy. Right? Now, it's not necessarily in the 10th, and he's got a powerful Rahu. Again, I'm not saying that's going to happen. But the potential is always there when Rahu goes over the sun. Rahu is eclipsing the sun, and the sun is it's the life in you. Again, Saturn is the death. Saturn is time wearing it down, but the thing it's wearing down is the sun. Over time, the sun gets dimmer and dimmer. You can think of the sun that way. It's like that vital essence, and Rahu eclipses the sun. And by the way, and again, because the sun is also his Lagna lord, we shouldn't take this lightly. This is a dangerous transit. And again, we can also see that he's going to get care because he's present, he's a powerful man, but you shouldn't minimize that this is also showing the danger in this transit. And so this is what I have here. I don't want to go much longer, but I wanted to just bring this up and show this really remarkable transit of when the president announced publicly that that he has COVID, and discuss some of the background. I didn't plan to getting in the election thing, but I thought I would show anyway, just because it's interesting to look at, and people should know how to find the data here. So this, you keep saying, what about the eclipse on his natal moon? What about it? Yeah, he's got an eclipse in his natal moon in his chart. Right, that's what he's got. So so we'll leave it at that. There's been a bunch of questions, and I don't know, some people have probably been triggered because I've said things about Trump and his followers don't like it, and I just don't care at this point. I'm not going to look at it. I just wanted to put this out there, and I hope you benefited from this case study. I'm going to do a final one on the election itself to see to sort of wrap it up. But anyway, we'll see where things go from here, and you have a good night.